Hey gang, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and thanks for stopping by and checking it out. And guys, today we're going to be talking about finesse fishing for wintertime bass, really from like November, December, January, and into February a little bit. Some of my top techniques that I use to finesse them out in the cold weather months to just get lots of bites. I mean, you're not going to catch a lot of big ones doing this, but this is a really good way to catch lots of fish and get a lot of action during the whole winter period out there. So we're going to get to that today. Going to show you what they are, going to give you guys some tips and advice on how to fish them as well. Also, guys, before we get started, just want to invite everybody out there, if you haven't had a chance to subscribe here to Intuitive Angling, much appreciated if you'd subscribe and hit that notification button. And also, anybody out there interested in becoming a member of Intuitive Angling, members get extra videos every week that aren't seen by the public and some access to my personal email address for your fishing questions. So all you have to do to that is go to my YouTube homepage. You'll see a little join button, and hit that button. It gives you all the information. So much appreciated. Okay, guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you my favorite finesse tactics here, what the baits are. First of all, before we get into this, I want to sort of clarify the conditions and the type of water that you need for this to work. Now, obviously, it's a clear water technique in the wintertime, because you're going to find out, you're not going to catch many fish in lakes that don't have some decent water clarity in the wintertime. If you have a lake that has less than 2 foot of visibility, it's usually a little bit tougher to catch fish, especially if your water temperatures drop below 50 degrees. If your water temperatures stay above 50 degrees, if you guys are so far south that it just doesn't get that cool, yeah, you can catch them in 2 foot of visibility. But ideally, for these techniques that we're talking about today, it's best if you have water visibilities of like at least 3 feet, ideally sort of that 4 to 6 foot zone, which is common in a lot of lakes, a lot of reservoirs across the country in the wintertime. Okay, so anyway, if you hear some noise, Elijah's over there working on some projects here in the garage here. So I'm going to get into it, guys. We'll sort of show you what my favorite setups are, how I like to rig them, and what the deal is with it, how I like to fish them. Now, the first one I'm going to talk about, guys, and also all the baits and everything I talked about, guys, I'll put all my Tackle Warehouse links in the description, so you can go right to those links specifically and get each one of these products if you're going to try them. So the first one, guys, is a Zoom Tiny Fluke here. This is just a diminutive fluke. It's only like a little over 2 inches long. And I rigged this up with a 1/16 ounce core tackle hover rig head. Now, this is a super finessey outfit here. This is one of the ones I want to really show you a lot about rigging it. When you come in on the hover head, we've talked about this before, come in like maybe 1/4 of an inch below the head. You don't put the hover rig into the head like a jig head. You come like 1/4 inch behind it and just thread it all the way through up in there. And the advantage of this hover rig, which has really taken over across the country, is all of your weight is inside of the swim bait or whatever soft plastic, so you don't have any visual lead coming out. Now, this is a little bit tricky when you first do it, so you may have to work with it a little bit to get it right. But what happens is when you come to this point, you need to tuck that little point back into the plastic. So we're going to come, gently through there, and we're going to tuck it right back in to the plastic part of it, like that. Now, what you have here, guys, is you have your little minnow imitator. This looks just like a minnow the fish eat in the wintertime. All of your lead is internally where the fish can't see it. And by this lead being down on the shank, when this thing falls through the water, it just sort of goes crazy all the way over when it's falling. And when you give it the slightest little twitch with your rod tip, it just sort of darts everywhere. It actually makes the thing look like live bait. So guys, definitely try to get some of these. A little Zoom Tiny Fluke, about any shad color work with the 1/16 ounce hover rig head for core tackle. Links in the description there. Now, this particular setup here, the hover rig with the Zoom Tiny Fluke, this is sort of specifically for suspended fish. So what I'm looking for this setup is I usually like to get out on main lake points with water visibility over 4 foot clarity. And I'll simply cast it all around the ends of those points and the sides, count it down to where I'm seeing some activity on my 2D sonar, like where I see a lot of shad. If I'm seeing shad at 15 or 20 feet, I cast it out there, count it down, And just when I'm reeling through there, I'm sort of twitching it like this, just short twitches of the rod tip to get that thing sort of darting everywhere. It's not darting, far jerks like that, but just little small twitches to make it just look like a little minnow down there. Sort of like the same place anywhere that if you're catching them on a jerk bait in the wintertime, you can throw the hover rig with the tiny fluke on there and mop up, any other fish that are left on there, especially if you got spotted bass. So that's one of my favorites. Now the next one, sort of similar to that, but a little bit different. This is the Megabass Hazadong Shad, and this is the 1/8 ounce Megabass Okashira jig head. Now this is another finesse presentation, a little over 2 inches long. One of the things I do on this for the winter time is on the Hazadong Shad, on the 3-inch model here, is I pinch the head off, and I do this just to sort of make it even smaller, because in that real cold water, I want the smallest profile I can get. Thread it on there with the Okashira head. And the thing about that, I tend to like the Okashira head if I'm fishing a paddle tail like that, but if I'm fishing a straight tail swim bait like the tiny fluke or regular fluke, I like the core tackle hover rig head. But this is the setup with the Megabass Okashira and the Megabass Hazadong Shad. I mean, that thing, you can just look at these things, man. You can see, if a bass gets around these little things in clear water, they're gonna eat these things. Now the Hazadong Shad's a little bit different because I fish this one closer to the bottom. Again, I'm targeting steep banks, main lake points, ditches. A lot of times what I do with this is I'll cast it out there, I let it, let it sink all the way to the bottom, and then I just slow reel it. And I try to keep this thing, maybe a foot off the bottom. And if I feel like I'm coming up too high off the bottom, I just let it go back to the bottom and just slowly start reeling it through the water column, just trying to keep it close to the bottom. I'm not really targeting suspended fish with this. The next one, guys, is a flick shake. This is the Gamakatsu flick shake head. This is a Zoom finesse worm on there. Guys, this is a really good bait in the wintertime. A lot of people don't fish it. A lot of people do not use this bait very much in the wintertime, but this is a really good bait if you have a lake that has bluff walls on it. If you've got bluff banks that have a lot of vertical rock on it that drops right off into the channel, one of my favorite ways to catch them in the wintertime, guys, is I take this flick shake with a little trick worm or a little finesse worm on it. You can use like a little 4-inch Cinco or anything. The 1/16 ounce size, and just cast it to those bluff walls and just sort of let it fall down the side. I'm trying to work it down, however deep I think the fish are. I'm not really targeting suspended fish. I'm throwing this thing and working it more just like a jig down the bank. And most of the time in the wintertime, my fish are gonna come 15 to 20 foot deep on those bluff walls. So if you guys have a lot of bluff walls, like you guys that fish like Lake Cumberland in Kentucky, or Ozark Lakes, or any place that's got bluffs, this little flick shake rig is gonna work good. And finally, my last one is a little bitty, tiny 1/8 ounce jigging spoon. Now, a lot of people use jigging spoons and they usually like a 3/4 ounce. But guys, in the wintertime, this little bitty, tiny jigging spoon, 1/8 of an ounce, this is a Hopkins jigging spoon. This thing is freaking deadly in the wintertime. I'm usually fishing it on spinning rod, 8-pound test line. I usually do put a split ring on there. Well, I just allow that tape. A split ring with some type of a barrel swivel to eliminate line twist. But what I'm looking for with this is I go back into the guts or the ditches in the lakes that I'm fishing. So say for example, if I go into a major creek arm and there's some coves in that creek arm, I'll get in the middle of those creek arm coves and I just work straight down the middle of the cove and I pitch the thing out about 10 foot in front of the boat and just free spool it down to the bottom, pop it off the bottom, maybe 5 or 10 feet, and try to target those fish that are either on the bottom, or if you've got submerged timber, fishing this little jigging spoon over the top of that deeper submerged timber in lakes like Lake Lanier in Georgia, all the Ozark lakes, any lake that has timber is a really good way to catch them in the wintertime. So anyway, guys, that's my favorite finesse models. Little core tackle hover rig with the Zoom tiny fluke on it. The Megabass Okashira head with the Hazadong Shad 3-inch size. Gamakatsu flick shake head, Zoom finesse worm, little 1/8 ounce Hopkins spoon here. Again, I'll put the tackle warehouse or my tackle warehouse link of each one of those in the description there. But give them a try, guys. They will definitely get you some bites. It's a good way to catch them, especially on those days where the fishing's tough. Like if you don't have much wind, it's bright skies, all that type of stuff that's traditionally hard to catch them in. It's a good way to get you some bites. So hope it helps. See you guys.